Hello Professor, my name is David Pratt. This is my recording for Milestone 6, the final project presentation. So here's what I'll be going over for you. I'm going to overview the project. I'm going to show you the GUI elements that relate to my functionality, and I'm going to explain an interesting or particular feature that was challenging to implement. And then any unexpected challenges that I came up onto. So we'll start here with the GUI because that's the easiest one to show, and then we'll go into the implementation, which will lead really well into an interesting feature and the unexpected challenges. So starting with the GUI real quick, we've got our search right here. If I type in Indiana Jones and hit search, excuse me, wait for it to do its thing, you can see we get a list of books, we get a list of movies, we get a list of TV shows. Really pretty simple, and the lists are using a JavaScript library called Owl Scroll or something like that lets me scroll through by double clicking and scrolling. There's supposed to be actually thingies down here to let me control it, but they're not there, so I have to work on that. That's a future improvement. But yeah, let's see how we're doing that here. So back in my code, you can see if I go to my routes file, it's web.php, that's what I'm doing wrong. In my routes file here, you can see we've got a get and a post request to /search. So if I go back here and just get /search, it sends me to this page. And that is hitting this search controller at show. So let's go to my search controller, and you can see the show method right here. It's just simply returning a view called search. If I go back to my routes file and we submit a post request to index, which that search form will submit, and we search for Indiana Jones one more time, and hit search, it's submitting obviously a post request to that and hitting that endpoint, and we're getting the results. So what is that post request hitting? Let's go back to the search controller. We're hitting this index method here, which is calling to a backend API helper and a search helper. To the API is updating the database, and the search helper is actually searching for entertainment where this request search variable is found. So let's take a look at both of these. I've gone over all of this in my previous videos, but I'll go over it again for you here. We're in what is called a service provider here. Like I went over before, if you want, you can look at, I think it was 2 videos ago, I talked about service providers in depth, but a service provider is just a way that Laravel provides for you to register services in a container and use IOC inversion of control to grab all of your methods and whatnot from that container. It allows the service itself, so this API class, to register dependencies, such as a new client, which is a guzzle client. Lets me guzzle or consume APIs. So it lets me set those up on the on this end, on the model end, on the data end, rather than having to do it in the controller or wherever else I want to call it. It's basically a static way to make calls to the back end. Very nice, very clean. Super helpful. As you can see in that search controller, I just said search for entertainment where, or API update the database. So really simple. We're calling to a movie database, and if we could find the movie, we're making the movie and passing in that movie that we found. If we didn't find the movie, we are making a new movie. And this all hits this right here, which is just grabbing stuff from the API call and putting it in these and then saving it to the database. This section down here creates the genres in the genre related table. I've got a relational database going. Same thing for books, except books we're doing a little bit differently, I think. Yeah, I didn't end up updating this one to do that way, but if we can find a book, we're saving it into this, and then we're using, if we don't find a book, we're setting the new book here. We're setting the API ID in this section, and then everything else is just about, again, setting variables, and then down here, saving it. And this down here is going to set the authors. If you can't find an author, it's going to create one, and if it does, then it just attaches it. And then down here is TV shows. TV shows I did much the same as movies because we actually use the same database, or I'm sorry, the same API. The movie DB is my API that I'm calling to. And we're just searching for a parameter. So super simple on the backside for the API. So let's take a look back at, well, we'll go through search controller. So we finished going through the API, then we're returning a view, and we're loading this search for entertainment where. So let's go to the search file. Again, this is in a service container. This is a service provider. So this is a back-end way it registers any dependencies on itself rather than having it registered in the controller or whatever else. Gives a nice clean way to do it. Didn't need any dependencies for this because I'm just doing stuff with my own database, but still wanted to use it just to keep it the same and very clean in the controller, on the controller side. So on this one, we're just creating a collection, and then we're grabbing stuff from that database using the search param, and then we're only using the unique, which I guess I could put this all in one call. I can collect that uniquely, but no matter. We're doing the same thing for movies, same thing for TV shows, and you can see it's only a few lines of code for all of them. It's just grabbing, it's looping through this database columns thing that I have here. These are common database columns in all three databases, so we're going to loop through all of those, and for each column where it's like the parameter, we're getting it, and then we're pushing it to a collection, and then returning that as an array. My bad. Same thing for books. Literally the same exact code. I probably could abstract this to its own area, but we have to call to the book model here and to the movie model there. I suppose I could save that to an array or something like that, but that's not a big deal. So we're doing the same thing for movies, same thing for TV shows, and we're just saving it all to a collection and returning that collection. And so that's where you see here in my search controller, we're returning that collection as a results variable. If we go into the view called search results.blade, we're just looping through that results variable that you just saw and getting every movie as its own on it by itself, and then putting it in a card. And those cards are getting loaded into, let's see, how did I do that? Boop-boo. Oh, here we go. So this one is loading the movies, this one is loading the TV shows, and this one, let's see, movies, TV shows, so books is right here. Super simple and straightforward. So on to the next part. That was the overview of the approach and the GUI elements to support key functionality. An interesting feature. I mean, the front end features don't excite me a lot. I mean, I have the owl carousel, but I really didn't do much for that. I just downloaded it and added it to my file path, and then was able to use it. The things that excited me the most were finally understanding service providers. That was something that I had struggled with in the past, and so finally getting a handle on that was pretty exciting to me. But that also was the most challenging part, honestly. I mean, well, yeah, that and let me go back to my API one. I spent a lot of time on this API file because I wanted a way to, when I'm calling to update the database, I wanted to actually update the database instead of just saving new stuff to the database. So what I had previously was just a bunch of code in here. If you found the movie, or I'm sorry, if you didn't find the movie, it saved it to the database, and then otherwise it didn't do anything else. Now I've updated it to where if you find the movie, you're going to update the movie, and if you don't find the movie, we're going to add a new movie. So and I did the same thing, like I said, for TV shows, and I had the same thing before. So if we can find the TV show, we're going to pass that in and update it. If we don't, we're going to pass in a new TV show down here, and we're going to create a new one. So I spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to do that. I don't know why that took me so long. Probably just a weird mental block thing. Should have been really simple, but it just took me a minute to kind of wrap my head around it. I mean, I'm working with a lot of stuff that I haven't necessarily used a ton. I've never made API calls from Laravel before, and I've never used Guzzle before. So it was an interesting learning process. And then I've never, passed that data to a database. I've never worked with APIs. So it all comes down to that. So just trying to learn how to do that, kind of posed the biggest challenge to me. But it's all just moving data around, which is really nice and really easy. And there's great ways that Laravel provides for me to do that. Really helpful. I really like working with this framework. I think it helps a ton, and it can save a bunch of time. I mean, this whole IOC thing would have taken me forever to figure out how to implement on my own. But Laravel comes with it out of the box, and it lets you use facades and things like that. So that's where I can in the controller just say, use these 2 dots to statically call the update database. I mean, it's a really nice, clean way out of the box to let me do that. So yeah, there's been a couple other changes that I'm looking at making. Some future changes I want to make. You can see I'm actually working on them. If I go to home right now, should be able to see. Yeah, I've got this search right here. I'm looking at implementing that. So that'll be fun to be able to just hit enter and search right from up there. I also want it to autocomplete, so I want to be able to see a little box down here that shows me, what when I key up. So if I hit J, it starts to fill in. Hey, maybe you're searching for, I don't know, Julius Caesar. I don't know, something. It just starts to search the database for titles that you might be looking for. The next thing I kind of want to implement is, you can actually see where I've started here. If I go to my SAS file, this right here, if I hover over the navigation bar, we're actually going to uncomment that. I wasn't going to show you this, but I figured I might as well. And I refresh this page. Excuse me. If I hover over it, oh, it's not doing it now. It was a minute ago. If I hover over it, it expands the width. And so I want to implement a way to keep this small and clean and just kind of have a chevron over here, and once you hover over it, you get options. And it kind of keeps it out of the way. It keeps your nav bar out of the way so you can focus on the content. I have a bunch of other ideas that I want to implement. I'm actually wanting to make this into sort of a social media thing, and I'm going to keep working on it on my own. And you'll probably see some updates next week, because I think our assignment for next week is the same. But that's what I've got so far. That's what I've been working on. That's what has excited me, and what has challenged me. So this has been a really fun project for me to work on. So I appreciate your help and support, and just yeah, appreciate it. We'll talk to you again next week.